Hello, everyone. Welcome to Marketing Matters, a forum where we seek to elevate marketing in fresh produce. The truth is, marketing really does need to matter more if we're going to drive demand, sell more fresh fruits and vegetables, and ultimately contribute to the health of our society. Hello, I'm Danelle Macchialmi, President and CEO of DMA Solutions, and we are so happy to have you. Thank you to our repeat attendees, and certainly welcome to our first-time guests. It's been a minute since we've hosted a webinar due to Fresh Summit in preparation for that, and certainly the historic first virtual version of that event last week. To give you a little bit of history, in May of this year, obviously dealing with the pandemic as we all were, we decided that if we couldn't be in our collaborative environment as a team or face-to-face with each of you, our colleagues, then we would just make ourselves available for people who wanted to connect deeper on topics surrounding marketing. So we created this webinar discussion series, Marketing Matters, and this will be our 11th one. So super happy to have you, and really look forward to unpacking this topic today. I think it's one that is not new to any of us, but trying to get the decision makers in our industry to understand more about the power and the effectiveness that marketing can have for our organization is something I think that we're continuously looking to elevate within our organization. So super excited to unpack this with you. We've teed up just a few short slides to provide some context for us all to kind of get on the same page. And then I would really looking forward to discussing this with you, because I think when we can get this right, as marketers in this industry and really elevate this, I think good things are to come. So with that, I'm going to just do a couple housekeeping, and then I'll turn off my video, walk us through the deck, and then come back with the DMA team and look forward to a healthy discussion. So in terms of housekeeping, we will share this deck with you. Not only will we share the slides, but we'll also share our notes that are in there. The team works extra hard to put together very thoughtful notes, and sometimes I go off on a tangent or go off in a different direction. So I think there's just some really good information there for you to have, and I just want you to know that. So if you're taking notes, you can expect to have the deck with the notes sent to you. And we love questions and discussions. Again, our ultimate goal for Marketing Matters is to be able to tee up a topic and have more thoughtful discussions, because we learn as much from you as we hope that you're able to take away from us, not only here on Marketing Matters, but certainly our blog, The Core. So with that, I'm going to turn off my video and tee up short 14 slides here for what I hope will be a meaningful discussion for all of us. Thanks so much again for attending. Before we dive in, I can see that some people are still joining us. We are excited about not only today's webinar, but the ones we have coming up. You'll see that we are going to, in November, really look at maximizing your 2021 marketing budget. I know some of you are in the midst of your 2021 budget. We'll talk about maximizing that, because I think we have to really consider the impacts of the pandemic and what's working and what we should be potentially leaning into. So we'll look at some of those areas. And certainly for those of you on a calendar year, what does a 2021 marketing budget look like? So excited about that. And then on November 18th, the roles of sales and marketing in fresh produce. And again, I think we'll probably be touching on this a number of times going forward. But I think that's another critical area, much like the base of understanding we're hoping to create today for our decision makers. I think the role of sales and marketing, and really what it is, maybe what it definitely touching on what it has been and where it is today, but more importantly, where it needs to go in the future in order for us to elevate our products and services. So really looking forward to that topic. And then in December, we'll just have one webinar, and we are going to look at trends and predictions for 2021. So hope to invite you there. Really simple to go and register for these. You do have to register for them one at a time, and you can easily find these on our website up in the top right corner, there's upcoming webinars, and you can easily register for each of these or the ones that make sense to you. And then just a reminder for those of you who are new to the DMA community, and just to tee up our blog. So while we are doing these webinars on a regular basis, we've been committed to and continue to be committed to publishing content each and every week. I do want to point out that we have a search function that allows you to quickly find information. We've shared whether it's hot marketing topics that fresh produce marketers want to know more about. We find that most people search for topics like social media. Obviously, Fresh Summit this time of year is a popular one. We cover events on our blog, as well as elevating topics around marketing. So wanted to invite you to take a look at that if you weren't aware of our blog. All right, so let's dive in. And I think a good place to start, is with the realities. And I think this slide could have easily said, why is sales valued more than marketing? And for those of you who don't know, I sold produce for 10 years prior to starting DMA 16 years ago. So I come from a place of empathy around this topic. And I think some of the realities that we need to remind ourselves of, I always believe that we have to start with where we've been so that we can create a greater path forward. The realities that I think that drive this conversation is that we know fresh produce will sell without marketing. It's historically been the case. And why is that? And the most simplistic reason is because the nature of a perishable product and the inherent demand for produce will sell the product. That said, if we care about who we're selling to and for what price, then we need to care more about marketing. And I think, again, we'll unpack commoditization here in a second. But I think that reality, we have to remember that, is that especially as we're thinking about positioning marketing to decision makers, is the likelihood of the company being successful without a great deal of marketing is probably very apparent. So keeping that in mind. The other thing is that produce marketing was relegated to reaching buyers at retail and food service primarily until, quite frankly, the last 2 decades. So expanded marketing to consumers was not a realistic or scalable option for most companies. And there were a few exceptions of companies 25 plus years ago, at least when I entered the industry, that were doing consumer marketing, but that was very few in numbers. And primarily it was because of the limited ways that we could reach consumers. And we know today that is far expanded with digital, email, social, and certainly the smartphone world that we're living in. So there's that reality. And I think the latest reality that is, to me, the most promising in an odd way is this pandemic has completely exposed the value of marketing for fresh produce. And if you've attended any of our previous webinars, I would invite you to go to, by the way, to the free resources section on our website. You can see previous decks and topics that we've covered there. And in a number of those webinars, we showed you and shared with you the incredible performance that we've seen representing brands in this industry since March. It's in some cases unprecedented, the amount of promotional success we've seen, which was perplexing for us. We initially had a thought that, that things would, from a marketing perspective, that people just would not be interested. And to the contrary, they wanted more engagement from brands in fresh produce, not less. So that's another reality that we need to, again, kind of keep in our purview as we unpack this topic. So, these realities, they set the stage and can help guide us as we work to, quite frankly, educate CEOs and decision makers toward a greater understanding of the role marketing can and should play in a company's success. In other words, for companies that want to be relevant now and in the future, marketing is as important as sales. So let's start there. This next slide is something from McKinsey & Company. And if we're going to educate any audience, we know that we must meet them where they are. And our CEOs and decision makers are no different. And one of the reasons why our decision makers may not be as connected to marketing is because the reality shown here on this slide. And this slide shows what a CEO in general might be worrying about on any given day, from managing leadership teams to addressing performance and the health of the organization. You could say that CEOs and decision makers have a lot on his or her plate. Now, add in the implications of leading during COVID, and it's clear that decision makers are juggling a lot this year. And we'd like to start off with that with a poll question regarding your CEO's relationship with marketing. So we can tee that up. And the question being, does your CEO appreciate the important role that marketing plays for the company or brand? In your opinion, obviously this is an opinion-based question. All right, Audrey, if you want to close the poll. So the good news is that 69% of you say that they do appreciate it. So that is very enlightening. And in terms of the somewhat, I think, that's not news to us either, is I think we have some work to do. And that could be relative to on the consumer front. It could be somewhat to the trade front. But again, I think as marketers, we're in a role to educate and enlighten. And again, that's why we're unpacking this topic today. So thank you for that. So to further the point around what CEOs, what they're facing, and Kathy, during the state of the industry, certainly outlined 3 challenges that, from PMA's perspective, that are top of mind for CEOs leading companies in this space through the pandemic. And as you can see, these are not issues to shake a stick at. And the challenges, they're absolutely imperative to the performance of the company now and into 2021 and beyond. So I just appreciated the context from McKinsey and company looking at a wide swath of decision makers and what they may be facing or looking at, but certainly it somewhat narrowed down to our industry during last week's Fresh Summit is a good place for us to start when it comes to understanding the what CEOs have on their mind. So knowing these realities, the stage is set for marketers to provide solution to these ever-growing challenges and that the businesses are facing today. Yes, the pandemic has brought new challenges to light, but it has also opened the door for marketing to be a part of the solution. And that's what I was speaking to earlier, is that I think in many different ways, whether it's internal communications or external communications or the promotion and education of our products, it was so interesting to see marketing, the roles that we all play come into the spotlight during such quite frankly, a dim time in our history. So continuing to be the hero will take dedication and grit. And if the growth of your organization and quite frankly yourself is something that you're interested in, I think we have to all embrace this. And so before we start to unpack more, let's see how the next poll question shakes out. How would you rate your ability to conduct marketing at the level you deem appropriate for your brand and company? Again, ability being, do you have the resources to conduct marketing at the level that you would like to see for your brand or company? All right, Audrey, you want to show the results of that one? I'm not surprised by this. And quite frankly, I'm glad that right on the money was not one of the answers, because then that insinuates that we're doing everything right. And I think just from a consumption point alone, I think all of us marketers understand the proverbial boat that we're in. We have a lot of work to do, and on behalf of this industry, to get more produce in the hands of shoppers out there. So, speaking to those of you who answered not even scratching the surface, I can certainly appreciate that. In many ways, we're not as an industry. And a lot of that comes back to what we're spending. And a lot of that also comes back to, a fundamental understanding of the difference between sales and marketing and the vital roles that they play. So, and I'm also encouraged by somewhere in between, because I do think that there's been a lot of progress made relative to marketing in this industry, particularly in the last 10 to 15 years. That being said, we still have a long way to go, because I think ultimately we understand that our work leads to a positive impact on society. And so I think, at least for us here at DMA, resting until we start to see major results in that area, we're always encouraged. We have more work to do. So thank you for the input there. That'll be our last poll question for today. So before we talk about what your CEO needs to know, we should explore more why your CEO needs to know more about marketing. It's important for us to outline the stakes if we remain status quo. So fundamentally speaking, if you're the marketer at your company, CEOs must know about marketing to better understand how your work and your team's work is impacting sales and the overall company goals. So where I like to start when we tee up this conversation, and I personally have it a lot, and I know more so in the team, we're having it on a more regular basis, is if your CEO is ill-informed about what marketing is, we're in jeopardy of these things listed here. And the way I like to tee this up when I talk to decision makers is, what if we do no marketing at all? What are we left with? So then what? And so you can tee this particular conversation up in a number of different ways. And, first of all, it's most companies and most decision makers that we work with, they want to avoid commoditization. They do not want to be in the commodity business where you're relegated to accept the price that the market bears. And, so again, a commodity, that's a whole nother topic in itself, is the difference between a commodity and a branded product. But it's if you're here, the likelihood is that you're either managing a brand or you're trying to continue to build one. And so we know the difference. And we also know that commodities are perceived as the one with the cheapest price, just to put it most simply, which takes all of the value added out of the products that we're selling. And brands behave differently than commodities in so many ways. And sharing this with the decision makers is utmost important. So sometimes we can be in discussions within our organizations or see decisions that are being made. And even while the company may profess to want to build a brand or get behind a brand, sometimes our decisions in the moment, we're acting just like a commodity, and we're trying to move products at a certain price, or we're not pre-investing in marketing activities that could put us in a position to not have to simply play the price game. So preferred, that kind of tees into the next one, is preferred versus price driven. It's an issue if your company is positioning itself as a commodity and the PLU is the only thing separating your product from others in the bin. Brands work with more strategy to establish shopper preference and trust, just to name a few, that produces the repeat purchases of one particular brand. That is the goal that a brand sets out to establish, is that trust and that relevance with the shopper, so that they will prefer you the next time they're in the store. Effective positioning and innovation to drive demand. If your products aren't positioned well to address a produce buyer or a shopper's problems that they're facing in that moment, then you're in jeopardy of becoming obsolete, simply because you aren't being considered. So if you don't have products or services that meet a retail buyer, for instance, or especially now in food service, if you weren't able to pivot and create products for the food service community that address this pandemic, there's someone out there that is. And so a lot of times that's where marketing comes in. And most often is that we understand those needs of the audience, and we can work with sales and other aspects of the industry to shape innovation, to put us in an effective position to be of help to our audience so that we'll be chosen. And competitive forces, again, without marketing, you're in jeopardy of standing by and watching your competition soar beyond your level and ability to strategically compete, again, beyond the bulk bin. And so it is imperative that our CEOs know that, or you can paint the picture of what if we do no marketing at all. And in some of your cases, and we see this often, is if we kind of partly do marketing, we can't expect great results from a partial attempt at marketing out there. So that's another aspect that we need to elevate when have the opportunity to have these conversations. So now that we've scratched the surface on why it is important, and again, I'm sure that we could have listed 50 things on that particular slide. We just wanted to tee some of those up. Let's open up to what does your CEO need to know about marketing, which is the reason we're here. We'd love to hear your thoughts and questions again on this point. So please feel free to use the chat feature as we go through these slides, and then we'll look forward to open up discussion shortly. So what does your CEO need to know? Ideally, there are 3 key points. So let's dive into each of these. We've summarized, again, obviously a much broader topic into these key areas. Starting with, marketing and sales are not the same thing, but they should have the same goal. First of all, your CEO and leadership team must understand the difference between marketing and sales. Again, we're going to dive into that in a couple of weeks on a future webinar. But as we discussed earlier, marketing is a support to sales. And when done right, good things happen that motivate more sales and subsequently more marketing. So in short, sales focuses on the product or service, while marketing focuses on the audience we are selling to and their needs and preferences. Again, summarizing there, but they're different roles, but they should have the ultimate intended outcome. Marketing is an asset, not an expense. And I think historically, and this is still abundantly true in this industry, is that marketing is seen as an expense. And what I will tell you, if we're thinking about food choices that are out there, and if you've been around DMA enough, we like to pick on Doritos. But when we think about CPG and the other food choices outside of our industry, they see marketing as an investment. They don't see it as an expense. And they, so if you're thinking about it, basic accounting puts marketing below the line. And more progressive companies and companies that see it as an investment, you would put it as part of cost of goods sold, no different than you would the packaging. When you're looking at a P&L out there, you have the cost of the product and what goes into that before you get to the gross margin. And when we start to see marketing as part of the product and services we sell, then there's going to be obviously a potential for a greater outcome. And then if you're not performing, then, if the marketing is not performing, then the investment goes down. So again, another way to look at this is the reason why we see marketing as an investment is because your content that you're creating, your communities, and the connections with buyers and shoppers, that's an asset. And we saw it so prevalent when we saw email open rates for those companies and brands that have invested in nurturing a relationship with shoppers and buyers. Email open rates have been performing extremely well. That's an asset, to be able to email a community of people that trust your brand. And we saw same thing on social media. We saw engagement rates go up. And that's an asset to have at your disposal when you need to get key messages out to people about your product, whether that's trade or whether that's on consumer front. Another point here is marketing is more than trade show and trade advertisements. And again, noting back to the historical nature of marketing, not necessarily having the most tenured presence in our industry, is that often decision makers can relate marketing to several relegated activities. And these are just, a few of them. We have to make sure, and our role is to make sure that CEOs see beyond the usual activities. And the great news is that with a virtual Fresh Summit, we've been able to rely heavily on trade shows as part of our historical, how we market our products. And with that being completely turned upside down in 2020, I think it's opened a lot of, I'm not going to say to the awareness that we would all love, but it's definitely opened awareness to fostering a relationship beyond face-to-face interaction that an event or a meeting inside of, meeting directly with our customers. So again, if we want to move away from this commodity centric space and mentality, we have to view marketing differently. And I think that's a way to tee that up with your decision makers. And quite frankly, I think one of the things that, I sit in the seat of being a decision maker. And, when you can show me that what's being asked of me to support is backed with measurable outcomes, it's a lot easier to make that decision. And never before as marketers do we have more measurable activities at our disposal. So that is a huge advantage to us. And to validate the effort that we're making at DMA, we recommend measuring what you can and sharing results on a weekly basis with your leadership team to set the tone and engage them in the process. I will say that, we say weekly. What we encourage you to do here is to not wait to share wins with your organization. Sometimes as marketers, we're invited on a monthly or a quarterly basis to give presentations. And I've been there. And a lot of times marketing's last on the agenda. And we're hurrying through our information. So work to find ways to elevate wins and tie that back to why it's important. And I know a lot of you do that. But I think it's important, even if it feels like no one's listening. And even if it feels like there's not a response to the information you're sharing, our recommendation is to keep sharing that information. So effective marketing is an investment. So we touched on this point earlier, but want to discuss it even more. And beyond marketing being considered as an investment on, obviously in the books, which is, that's going to take some time for our industry to think in that mindset. We at least need decision makers' mindsets to be in alignment with these realities. Marketing is a marathon. It is not a sprint. Sales can be much more in sprint mode. Effective sales is certainly more strategic than that, but marketing is certainly a marathon. And there are very few, if any, quick moves that we can make to be nimble. But all things considered, effective and strategic marketing is a long-term play. Marketing requires time and resources to do it right. And I think the days of the lone ranger marketer, and many of you are in that position, it's difficult because of all the different aspects of marketing that we have at our disposal. Those are different skill sets. And so when you're thinking about time and resources, that's the people, the knowledge, and the hours, and quite frankly, the investment to get the results to truly make a difference with the marketing activities that you have. And I will tell you that we spend months and years building brands. So knowing and accepting that marketing is not only an investment, but a long-term one, it's important for CEOs to accept that when signing up for a marketing program. I wish there were a lot of silver bullets. We'd sell a lot of silver bullets if we could, but that's just not the reality of results-oriented marketing. And quite frankly, marketing is a legacy play. And if you think about it, if you think about the activities that we do, we're laying, by building trust, a foundation for our companies. And like Ford Trucks, for instance, brands should be built to last. Marketing is a machine that requires fine tuning and adaptation to perform at its best. And over time, it becomes a well-oiled machine that can and should last for generations to come. That's the mindset that we should have. And why is that? And the reason is marketing should build loyalty and drive engagement and ultimately trust. And that goes for our trade audiences, and that certainly goes for consumers. So if your CEO values the idea of your company being relevant beyond this year, beyond, what we can see in front of us, then I don't see how that's going to happen without thoughtful strategic marketing. I just don't see how we're going to get there, because again, at the center of marketing is story and positioning and executing activities that not only create the potential for a sell, but certainly a repeat sell of our products. And so marketing brings all of that together, and it's an internal investment as much as it is an external one, is the point we also want to make there. Successful marketing is measurable. And so we must showcase marketing with measurable outcomes, or we're going to be ignored. I think the days of the soft outcomes for marketing are going to go by the wayside. And I think we are in a position to provide quantifiable results that create a desire and interest in investing more. I know this about decision makers in this industry: when they can see an outcome or a results-based outcome, are inclined to invest more so in those activities. That's in the field. It goes for the same, or what goes on in the field, and certainly what goes on in marketing. And so these are definitely key points, are very self-explanatory, and I'm not going to dive deep into each one of them. They're just a few measurable results that one should expect from an investment in marketing. This is just, again, a safe place to start. And the results, they will vary depending on if you do other marketing activities that aren't listed, and based on the budget and expense that you have available to put toward each, the outcomes will certainly vary based on that. But no matter the budget or investment, you should measure the results and effectiveness to help you make smarter decisions for future marketing investments. One that we're not going to dive into today, and Megan's about to publish a kind of a very meaningful post on this, but Virtual Fresh Summit, we're getting calls left and right. Some were extremely happy with the outcome and some were not. And we kind of go back to, well, what did you put behind that investment, and how did you prepare your organization for that? So I think it's just a good example to say, if we had no measurements, that's an issue. But if our measurements were out of line with reality, then that's going to be a separate issue. So I hope you will take a look at her post, and that's certainly a topic that I think we can continue to elevate in these discussions. So these, again, are just several of the things that we know that you can measure with marketing today. And again, there'll be plenty of details here in the notes for you to review. So with all of that, here's our call to action based on what I've teed up. If we want to navigate the pandemic better, smarter, and prepare and flourish in 2021, we must do things differently by using marketing internally, externally, and consumer-centric way to help elevate our companies. Pandemic aside, just because we have to address that here, the point we're making stands beyond the pandemic. We need to do things differently. We can't keep doing things the same way and expecting a different outcome. And if there's one thing in addition to what if we have no marketing that I teed up earlier, that I say to decision makers, is you are saying to me in your business plan and the goals and the vision for your company that you want to expand, or you want to grow, or you want to, be different, not in a fundamental way, but you want to see a different outcome for your company, then what are we going to do differently? And the thing that I can always point back to is you need marketing to help you with a lot of these things. And so, because if you build it, who's going to know it's there if you don't have established trust in the marketplace, whether that be on the trade side or the consumer side? So we have to plant those seeds. And differently and more thoughtfully as marketers in our industry. And that starts with what, the onus is, quite frankly, on us. And one of the things that I know we need to do is listen better. And what I mean by that is we need to listen for signals within our organization and step up and say, marketing can help with that. Whether that's we're trying to get the employees to understand this new protocol. Well, let us review the information that you're sharing with them. We can help elevate those things for you or strengthen those messages for you. And again, I'm not suggesting that that's not happening, but that's just one easy example. For instance, decision makers in the industry who watch the state of the industry, it's likely they're struggling with at least one of the topics that Kathy elevated during her speech, whether that be culture and purpose, the power of e-commerce, or the future workforce. These are things that decision makers in this industry have elevated that they're concerned about. So knowing this, we can go back to our CEOs and let them know thoughtfully what that you took away from that and what we can do to help with these problems. Again, we have to be listening with intention when our executive leadership, especially the CEO, is speaking, so that we can identify and elevate solutions that marketing might be able to solve. So instead of just executing opportunities, we need to be in a position to hear where the company wants to go and be able to see marketing as being part of that journey beyond our current roles and responsibilities. And so, as we've stated, things are different than they were 15 years ago. And this can be daunting, thinking about what I just said, or it can be viewed as a huge opportunity of a lifetime. And often those are synonymous. So I think we can all agree, at least I hope, that we need more marketing in this industry, not less. And we truly hope that these slides have teed up some thoughts, points, and inspiration for elevating marketing within your organization and certainly within our industry. So with that, I am going to invite the DMA team and turn my video back on. And I would love to dive in and talk about your experiences and any questions, certainly. And let's kick off this discussion. So team, I could not see chat, so I'm not sure if there's been a comment or a question that would like to be elevated before we open it up. You're welcome if you want to join us live via video or certainly just even audio. Anyone on the DMA team present here can bring you forward as a panelist if you'd like to share some thoughts, challenge us on anything that we presented, or certainly help educate us on your points of view.
Oh, looks like I was muted. Sorry about that. We've got a couple of questions that have come in.
Awesome.
All right. So what are some ways that you and your team work to show the effectiveness of marketing efforts of our fresh produce clients?
Gosh, I know we could answer that in a million different ways, but let me give you an example. And certainly Mackenzie, Megan, y'all dub, any one of you dub to tell on this. But say, for instance, the company has a new product, and that new product was developed because you did research. Potentially you as the marketer identified a trend in the marketplace, whether it was a flavor profile, or even let's take COVID, for example. We knew early on that if your product was in a position of being a staple, even if not, that we knew real quick that larger pack sizes were in demand because people wanted to go to the grocery store less. And, they wanted to buy more when they were in there. So take any one of those examples. If you participated in that and potentially promoted that, but as you see the sales and you're listening to the sales team and you're listening to operations talk about how that product is performing, being able to add your own information or the information that you manage to those discussions is important. If you have a search function on your website of where your products can be found, provide that information. If you've posted content about this product, and there's some performance metrics to show your team that there's an interest in that product, or that there's a lack of interest, that we need to pivot. And so I think it's inserting ourselves more often with fact-based information is, to me, again, based on what the company is main priorities of the day are, or the week, or the year. Obviously knowing those things and constantly finding ways of working with your team, whether it's your internal or your external marketing teams, to find ways to strengthen and or critique, quite frankly, how that main point or that main strategy, or like I said, a new product development may be contributing to the dialogue around the strategic initiative, the new product launch, or whatever it may be. Sorry, I went a long-winded there, but I hope I made my point by saying we have to be more intentional with the information that we're sharing, and we have to figure out different ways to do that. In other words, don't wait until you've been invited to give a presentation to the executive team. Is my recommendation. Mackenzie, I'm sure you have thoughts there.
I think that was well said. All right.
Boy, I don't get those good marks very often. Mackenzie usually tells me I could say that in much shorter sentences. I'm sure Marcy's thinking that.
Right. How do you answer the ROI question that CEOs want to know when marketing asks for an investment?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny, the word return on investment. It's funny, we want that, but what we really want is the R. We want the return. And what we like to say in these conversations with brands and companies that we work with is the investment has to come first. Now, in order to get the investment, I think it's up to us to be able to showcase how we're going to measure that investment and how we're going to create that return. One of the biggest questions before March of this year is, what is the ROI of social media? And I wrote a post about it probably in April or May. Not one person was asking me about the value or the return on investment of social media during COVID. For the brands that were present out there, it was obvious. And I will say I've had more conversations, and we work with, within this industry. So most often we know and engage with at some point during the year with the decision makers at the companies that we work with, but not on a regular basis because we're typically working with the marketer. But I've never had more conversations with the decision makers in this industry about how marketing could help support them on their internal communications as well as their external. So to summarize that answer, we have to start with an investment first. We can't show a return, an actual return, until we have an investment. But what we can do is say, with this investment, we are going to measure the success of that investment in these ways. And this is what success should look like with this investment. And we're going to be dedicated to measuring that and pivoting as necessary. So I think, it's like with any business plan, talk to your operations team, invite them to, as I was going to say lunch, but we're not doing a lot of face-to-face lunches anymore, certainly for our friends in California. But, ask them, say, how do you get an operating capital expenditure through to the executives? What do you present? What information do you share? Because they're having to do the same thing. And potentially you could pull from that. It will be different, but potentially you could pull from that to use that as, if that's something the CEO is used to seeing, well, by all means, let's tee up our marketing ask to look like something that the operations team or the transportation team or sales team would be teeing up. So those are just a few ideas that I have off the top of my head.
I love that Ray from Baco Suite chimed in the chat with a recommendation for what she personally does, and that's to create a deck presenting the results. And that helps keep marketing top of mind after every campaign, which is something we do here as well as a best practice. So it's great to hear that you're doing that, Ray. Yeah,
that's great. I like starting off at the beginning of the investment when you're looking at the ask. What if your entire deck was, here's what success is going to look like. Here's the intended outcomes of this promotion or this, whatever it may be. This is what at a minimum we can expect. And then winning greatly looks like this, and giving them, painting a picture of the vision. Because, and I think the other thing I just want to add in here, this just popped into my head, we need to be careful using marketing lingo. This came out in the session last week that I was honored to participate in, and many of you were on there. I thought I learned just as much as I was able to share. I loved it. But we kind of get tangled up in using marketing words. We use words like CTAs, or, we need to be careful, and we're right there in it with you. We have to be careful of using marketing lingo to explain what we're going to do, because when you're in question, like, what are they talking about? You may not see it as being as valid as what it is. So that's another thing I would encourage us to do. Inherently, I'm guessing your CEO understands what an impression is, but you might want to add some context around why that's important. So we've had to learn to do that in many of these conversations with the brands that we work with. No
Right.
different than your finance person. If you've ever heard your CFO talk, I'm like, well, great, I need to bring a dictionary with me. So, it's the same thing for marketing.
Mm-hmm. So here's a good follow-up point to that.
Mm-hmm.
Some marketers might be afraid to paint a specific picture prior to a campaign because they don't want to be too specific and box themselves in or potentially not hit the mark. So
Fair.
How would you suggest that they go about pitching a vision or painting a picture for what success looks like without potentially putting themselves in a situation to fail?
Yep. Well, what I hope for you is that you eventually create a culture for marketing that the biggest failure is doing nothing at all. So that's where my mind goes first. Secondly, I think if it's a promotion and you've done a promotion before, use those numbers as the base for what you want to improve upon. So there's that. But if you're doing something for the first time, I don't know that I would give numbers. Because if you don't know, if you don't have a basis, but what you could do is say, these are the things we're going to measure. And this is why they're important. And this is how they're going to tie back to our ability to communicate with our buyers. So if we're doing a promotion for the first time, I don't know, for an upcoming crop, and we want to do this promotion so that we're going to measure these things so that when we go back to our retail partners, we're able to say we were able to garner foot traffic to your stores because we did these things and we measured these things, or we were able to increase trial for this product because we did digital couponing and we were able to get X% redemption rate. So I think sometimes you need to start with not specific numbers because you don't know, you need a basis. But if you've done a promotion before, then I think your internal dialogue is we want to always outperform. We did great last time before. We didn't know that we did great in these areas, but we want to improve upon these areas and really challenge ourselves. And so that would be the other feedback that I have there. Again, though, marketing is more of an exact science than it's ever been, but it will never be, because you're working in an environment where trial and experimentation and being out there is more important than setting docile. And so to 100% guarantee, sales doesn't have to commit to that when it comes to delivering products. So I don't know why marketing should have to live by those standards, but I appreciate that question because I've had to answer that question myself in my journey. So as a marketer here.
Yeah. I'll just add to that, that we set goals prior to every, consumer promotion or any other promotion that we launch or effort that we launch on behalf of our clients. And there are times when we don't hit our goals. Typically we really aim to make sure that we're setting SMART goals that are, specific, measurable, attainable, relative, and timely. Did I miss one? That was it.
No, you got it.
Yeah. So, we want to make sure that we're setting attainable goals, no things that we believe that we can hit, but there are times when we're trying to set a goal around something that maybe we've never done before and we just don't really know what to expect. Or, we're setting a goal around something thinking that we want a stretch goal, like we really want to push ourselves to hit this goal. And there are times when we don't hit the goal fully, and we just use that as a learning opportunity. So we tee that up as, okay, so we missed the mark on this goal. Here's why. Here's what we could probably have done differently, or here's what we suggest we do differently next time in order to get better results in this area.
Yeah, sometimes hindsight, sometimes you have to experience it before you can adjust it. And, and again, I think that's from our purview. We've done so much of this work that we do have a lot, and we've shared that in previous decks, and we share it in our core post. We're trying to give you in this industry benchmarks to work from. So I would also throw that in. There are plenty of benchmarks out there that you can use as a guidance for when you're putting together the outcomes that you're looking to achieve. So there's a difference between an outcome and a result. So I would encourage you, when you're presenting this, to be both quantitative and qualitative. And qualitative needs to tie back to company objectives. We said we want to sell more of XYZ. Well, here's a way that we're going to quantify that, and then everything else we're doing is a quality play, so that we can share that information with our buyers, learn from that. Because again, without marketing, if you're going to show up and have a conversation with your buyer, you're going to be talking about sales, quantity available, and you're basically in commodity mindset. So,
for sure. All right, here's a big topic in regards to consumption, and something that I think you'll be passionate about responding to, Danelle. John's asked if PBH is the only national organization that's marketing a message to B2B and B2C targets that's addressing all forms of fruits and vegetables with the goal of increasing per capita consumption, and followed that up with why does DMA only focus on fresh?
Why does DMA only focus on fresh? I mean, that's kind of a different, let me answer that question first. Is, John, I think my story, and if you don't, or somebody on here, is that I sold produce successfully for 10 years. And when our company was sold, the one that I probably would have worked for the rest of my career, I had an opportunity to be inside of a large produce corporation. And I realized that selling produce is not the challenge. But marketing, 16 years ago, think about it, marketing our products was, and I wanted to dedicate an effort, at least try. I didn't know if it was going to work, at least try to elevate marketing. And that's why we've dedicated ourselves not to consumption, but to demand, because you can't increase consumption of something where there's not demand. And we realized as a company going through this journey together, Marcy and Megan and Mac, and now the rest of the team, is that, demand and access are the two things we have to create as an industry to sell more of our products. We've done great in both of those areas, but we still have a lot more work to do. And so I don't think that we need to position back to PBH as an either or. Milk, they were able to pull all their dollars together 25 years ago. They had a huge consumption and understanding problem. They put $19 million at, I forget what the numbers ended up being, and that worked for them. They literally changed their landscape. But because again, I don't want to get too deep into the Got Milk campaign, but the reason why it was successful is because it was easy to assess the farmers, the dairy farmers per gallon, to come up with that $19+ million. And then they put the campaign. It did wonders for the dairy industry. And as Allison, who is a branding guru on our team, will tell you, and they used it too long and they failed to innovate. They failed to innovate as an industry. We cannot do an assessment in this industry across the board, because Lord help us, that organization would be 3 times the size of our government. And some of us on this call think our government's already too big. So with that, we don't necessarily have the ability to do a got milk, but I think that we've undervalued PBH. And why is that? My personal opinion, and I don't know if Wendy's on here, but she and I've had this conversation, and she would not, be surprised by this. Is I think we took eat produce because it's healthy for you too far. We relied on that for far too long. And John, I think you would concur with that. We didn't make it sexy. We didn't make it part of lifestyle. We didn't pivot quick enough. So PBH and the 5-a-day thing, it kind of, as consumers became more savvy through social and digital marketing, it kind of became a thing you see at the doctor's office, and so it didn't speak to millennials at all. And that, just as an example. So we have the opportunity now, and I think that PBH has done a better job with focusing on influencers, focusing on RDs, and certainly with Have a Plant messaging. But I think that was something, I don't know if you were able to attend the session. We can send you the details because you can still access it out on the Fresh Summit platform. But that came out loud and clear during the session during Fresh Summit that we had the privilege of participating in. So a long-winded response to your multi-level question or comment there, but that's just where my mind goes when, with what you posed. So.
Great. All right. I love this question about social media. How would you recommend building a case to my CEO to reallocate resources to social media? So I know we've spoken to this a little bit already. So how specifically could we approach a CEO about this?
Yeah. Let me ask this question back, and feel free to answer in the chat to Max so she can read it back to me. But, does your CEO value innovation? Does your CEO value having an in the moment, timely response to customer service issues or feedback? Do they value that? Do they value having the ability to reach buyers and shoppers where they are? Do they value that? We'll just start there.
All right. So let's say the answer is yes.
Okay. I would assume so. Okay. So the answer is yes, or you can put in there other things that they value, and I can try to help you see how social would play into that. I think we have to start there. And I think the thing we got wrong in this industry when social media came on is A, we sat on our laurels. B, we did it reactionary. Oh, so-and-so's doing it, so we just need to do it. That's just where we need to be. And we didn't take the time to really think through the strategy around social and how it can truly provide our entire company and all of our initiatives with insights that we've never had accessible to us before. I think the other thing is we got caught up in it being a free medium, and it didn't stay free for long. And so I would say that if we position social media not being an activity that others are doing, but if you position it as a vehicle to communicate with the audience that you're trying to influence, that's probably not the best word in the world, but you're trying to influence a buying audience and a shopping audience to consider your products and your company. And so the numbers are we can't deny that social media is a way to do that. I think that the other thing is helping them understand that it is not a free medium. You can't, you're in more harm's way by, excuse the language, half-ass doing social media than you are, not doing it all, or obviously going all in is the preferred method. So I don't think I'm answering the question solely, but what I'm trying to say is meet them where they are. What do they value in your organization? And then position social media as being a solution to elevate the things that they value. And we could have this conversation with whoever asked that question. Please be in touch with us, because we can give you a much more thoughtful plan for that, because we want you to succeed in that area. So Megan, I know you came forward. You wanted to jump in here. She's probably chomping at the bit.
No, no, I think everything that you said is valid. And I would add in, are your competitors, know what your competitors are doing, who are literally selling very similar products or offering similar convenience items, the value added piece of it. Find out what they're doing on social and use that as ammunition to why we need to be part of that conversation and part of that solution. Because while we're not taking care of social, our competitors are. And I know Danelle talked about that a lot. You can use your platform for the need for marketing based on what your competitors are doing. Because if you don't address those things, they are getting the lion's share of the attention from the consumers simply because that's who's available.
Mhm.
So even your audience, they may pick up something that's fresh cut that you provide, and they may do a search for it on Facebook. If you're not there, your competitor might be showing up as the result. So making sure that you're there to answer those questions, be there for customer service issues, and to build that legacy, that community for legacy.
Mhm. Again, I don't have my chat feature up. So whoever's asking that question, I would invite you to please have a conversation with us on that. We're happy to help you navigate that. We work on those opportunities every day.
So to piggyback on that, this question from Ashley is a good one about LinkedIn and specifically about qualitative results when it comes to social media and LinkedIn. So for example, she can see the names, the roles, the companies that people work for that are engaging with the content. So what are some good ways to present the potential of LinkedIn from a qualitative result standpoint?
Look, I always go back to this. Ashley, thank you for that. I don't know that I'm going to be able to completely answer the question in the way that you want. But when I think about marketing and I think about, we have a tendency to think that we have to touch everyone with our marketing activities, whether that's the consumer, whether that's trade. We've got everybody in the whole trade show has to come by our booth for success, or this many people, or these specific people. Relative to social media, we can get hung up on likes. We can get hung up on certain things. They're a way to measure it. But honestly, and it goes back to also Virtual Fresh Summit, we had to sit down as a company and go, do we care more about the number of visits or who the visits were and what dialogue we had with them? And LinkedIn's no different. And I see the work that, y'all are doing. This is Ashley Nickel that answers this question, right? Okay. So is like, it's the quality of those people. You're not going to reach every single person that you're connected with on social media, personally or professionally, every time you post. But it's a matter of you being consistent with it so that you increase the opportunities for the visibility. And I'm constantly, and again, we measure everything. So we'll put out a post and I'll be like, oh, you got pretty good, likes, engagement. And I'm always surprised when someone said, hey, I saw what you posted on LinkedIn, or I saw what DMA put out. I really been thinking about that. And most of the time I might go back and that person didn't engage with the content, through a like or a response or a comment, but they are seeing it. Why is that? It's because we're consistent. We're consistently there, and we have to meet people where they are. And so part of marketing is building trust. I know I'm going to receive your publication every, month that it comes out. And obviously some of your other publications weekly, or I'm going to receive your emails. I may not look at them on that day, but I can go back because I know that they're in my office, or that they're, available in my feed, or I can easily search for you and I can see what it is, because I trust that your organization, PMG, is going to put out, Packer, going to put out content that I care about, but I have to consume it on my time. So sometimes your analytics can be misleading in the moment. That's the point I'm trying to make. So sometimes, it is the quantitative and qualitative. You have to look at it on a aggregate sometimes to truly get the answer, is what we're doing effective? So I hope I scratched the surface there. Meg?
So I would look at Ashley, I would look at LinkedIn, and it's specifically a B2B platform. So it makes sense from a business development standpoint that you'd be looking at that. That's what's obviously going to trigger your CEO to care.
Mhm.
I would look at LinkedIn as a top of the funnel opportunity.
Mhm.
So it's kind of top of the funnel and middle, right? Because you're going to publish content out there and either people are or aren't going to engage with it.
Right.
When they do engage with it, as you are building your communities, what you're finding is that you're giving people more opportunity to continue to engage. So the growth numbers are meaningful. And we had to come to terms with that after trying to grow communities and then wrestling with why are we trying to grow. So I appreciate your question about that mattering. It absolutely does, because obviously, if you think of it as a pipeline and a funnel, the more people I have in my funnel, then the more people I could potentially convert to a subscriber or a reader, right? Okay, then at the lower level, the bottom of the funnel is the engagement. Who is engaging? Have a list of your top 10 to 20, must have customers, must have subscribers, and try to go get those people to look at what you're posting. Try to get them to engage. How are you going to do that? You're one of the greatest people on LinkedIn that engages with people already on LinkedIn. You're doing what you need to do. Sure, you could put some dollars behind going and attracting those folks, but when you report back saying, listen, we put this effort in specifically on LinkedIn, we used it as a pipeline, we used it as a top of the funnel pipeline, we narrowed it down to bottom of the funnel.
Mhm.
From, we identified these 15 people or these 15 companies, and we've converted half. So just that's how you might turn that into a conversation about ROI and conversions.
We report on that, Ashley. Like, for example, for our clients who are really invested in LinkedIn, we'll include little nuggets in our monthly reports back about, let's say for them, if they're a grower, maybe they're really invested in, Kroger right now, and they want to see that Kroger is engaging with their content. So we might go back and say, so-and-so from Kroger liked this LinkedIn post, and might leave that in there as a, that's a qualitative way of showing that, it's not anything super meaty, but it's a way to validate that LinkedIn, your investment in LinkedIn, or taking the time to make that post mattered because someone saw it that we care about seeing it. And sometimes it's just simply about getting that one set of eyes or one or two sets of eyes that really matter. So for you, like Megan said, I would identify, maybe there's a list of 5 companies that you guys want as advertisers that aren't currently advertising with you.
Yeah.
Can you get them to engage with your content? Can you put some ads out there and boost them directly to reach those companies, and then report back, we got a like from X company that isn't advertising with us yet. That's a win.
We try to make small wins very big ones, because if you're able to do something like Mackenzie just said, then your CEO's ears start to perk up. Wait a minute. Okay. So we are generating sales sort of in this passive way on social media. We don't always have to show up in a 10 by 10, every 10 by 10, or every whatever you do, you should show up to the trade show. But you could do it virtually as well. You can do this, you can convert sales by using social media.
I mean, you could put something out there like, here's 5 reasons to advertise with PMG or the PAC, or put something out there like that. And then whomever likes it, they're right for maybe a sales conversation at that point. It wouldn't be that weird for you guys to pick up the phone or reach out to this person because they liked that content. That shows intent.
Mm-hmm.
What's great is Ashley just probably randomly asked that question, and now we've gone into a full-blown sales strategy for her. So
Ashley's like,
Ashley.
whoa.
Thanks, Ashley.
Obviously, we're passionate about these topics. So is that it, Mac? I've really enjoyed this. So hopefully we were just able to shed a little light and certainly give you a little food for thought as you look to elevate marketing within your organizations and all of us together within this industry who definitely needs it. So with that, Mac,
we're good.
All right. Everyone have a wonderful rest of the week. And please stay safe. And I cherish and look forward to the day when we're all together again. So prayers to those in Colorado dealing with the fires. That's a terrible situation out there. So that's definitely top of mind for us here in Texas. So everyone have a great rest of the week. Talk to you soon.